If you're an injured lifter, then there's a good chance you've already been trying the usual things to solve your injury. You've probably been to traditional physical therapy and were given a cookie cutter rehab plan that was way too easy for you and honestly just felt even easier than your typical warm-ups would. It didn't challenge you, it didn't progress over time, and it definitely didn't prepare to get back to lifting that you want to do. You've probably also just tried resting and just completely avoiding the movements that do cause pain, like squats, deadlifts, presses, cleans, and anything else, in the hopes that it will just go away over time. And while this may work at first, when you try to get back to those lifts, the pain typically comes right back, just as bad as before, if not worse. The truth is that these typical approaches often don't work for lifters because they don't actually prepare you to get back to lifting and build up your capacity for training. The missing link for injured lifters isn't more banded rotator cuff drills or bodyweight core stability drills or just being told to stop lifting by your physical therapist. It's smart and intentional training modification. This is what allows you to actually safely train around your injury while calming things down and actually resolving the injury at the same time. And one of my absolute favorite ways to do that I've used with hundreds of my own clients is tempo modification. Tempo modification lets you take a movement that's currently painful, sketchy, and even unpredictable and turn it into a controlled, confidence-building version of itself. It lets you keep training the lifts that you love, but without putting your body in positions, speeds, or under loads that it's not yet ready for. And it creates a safe, structured path back to full lifting. In this video, I'm going to break down exactly what tempo is, why it is such a great tool to use when rehabbing an injury, and how I've personally used it to help hundreds of lifters overcome their injury and get back to lifting that they love. Tempo is simply the speed at which you do certain parts of a rep. It's usually written in a 3-digit format where the first number is the duration of the eccentric or lowering phase, the second number is the duration of the pause at the bottom of the movement, and the third number is the duration of the concentric or the lifting phase. For example, a 303 tempo squat would have a 3-second eccentric or lowering phase, no pause at the bottom, and a 3-second concentric or lifting phase, while a 530 tempo squat would be a 5-second eccentric or lowering phase, a 3-second pause at the bottom, and then you would stand up with regular speeds. Tempo modification is such a great tool to use when you're rehabbing an injury because it forces you to use less weight than you normally would for any given number of reps. For example, if you would typically do sets of 5 on the back squat with 225 pounds, you might only be able to do a set of 5 with a 303 tempo at 185 pounds. Not only this, the fact that you're using slower speeds means that the forces that your body has to deal with while lifting are invariably going to be less. Remember that force is dependent both upon the weight that is being lifted and the speed that's being lifted at. And because slower tempos require to use less load and slower speeds, it really ramps down the forces that your body experiences during any given rep. And this can be a great way to take a movement that used to be really painful if you were to train with normal loads and normal speeds and turn it into a movement variation that is much less painful or completely pain-free. When you're modifying the tempo for a lift, you can change the duration of the eccentric, the pause, or the concentric, and they each have their own pros and cons. For any given movement, we're strongest when we're lowering the weight, we're a little bit less strong when we isometrically hold that weight, and we're the weakest when we're trying to lift that weight. Taking this into account, if we want to limit the weight the most for a movement, then we would want to use a slow concentric. If we wanted to limit the load a little bit less than that, then we would just do a longer pause at the bottom. And if we want to limit the load the least, then we would just do a slower eccentric. However, we don't need to just choose one phase of the lift to implement these slower tempos or pauses. We can mix and match as we see fit. Typically speaking, when I'm programming tempo modification for my own clients, I'm going to start them off with slower eccentrics and concentrics at the same time, such as a 303 tempo or a 202 tempo. Because we're slowing down the speed of the eccentric and the concentric, this is going to limit the weight that they can use the most, which is a really great entry point into a painful movement. After they've been trained this way for a little while and their pain is improving and their strength is improving, then we'll transition them to tempos that use a slower eccentric, a pause at the bottom, and then a regular speed concentric. Because we're no longer slowing down the concentric, we can use a little bit more load for this, but we're still utilizing slower eccentrics and the pauses to limit the overall load that they can lift. Examples of this would be a 530 tempo or a 420 tempo. And then once my clients have been able to train with minimal to no symptoms for a while, I'll further progress the tempo to just use slower eccentrics and then no pauses and regular speed concentrics. During this phase, I'll often program lifts with a 4 to 5 second eccentric. For example, one of my clients is a powerlifter who came to me because he was having really bad back pain when he would squat with heavier weights. So for his first training block, we started him off with 303 tempo box squats. Once we trained those for a couple weeks and he was able to handle pretty good loads for that sort of rep range and tempo, we then progressed to 202 tempo regular squats. From there, we progressed to 420 tempo squats, and then 5-second eccentric squats, and then just regular speed squats. This progression happened over the course of about 5 or 6 months, but by the end of it, he was back to squatting with regular tempos and regular loads that he was used to training before his injury happened in the first place. Your injury doesn't have to mean the end of your barbell training. As long as you're able to find a way to modify your training so you can train with minimal to no symptoms and then progress it over time, there's no reason that you can't continue training the lifts that you love. And tempo modification might just be the best strategy that you can utilize to make that happen. If you found this video to be helpful, then make sure that you give it a like and subscribe to my channel for future training and rehab information.